Live post-fight reaction to Kell Brook versus Errol Spence. Absolute war. I've just recorded this straight after the bout has been called and the fight is over. Errol Spence forces the stoppage, and we have a new IBF welterweight champion. And it was an extremely exciting fight when it lasted. It was a back and forth fight when it lasted. I was looking at the bookmakers' odds during the course of the fight, and the odds were going up and down and up and down and up and down. Really was a bit of a roller coaster ride watching this fight. I'm going to start, before we get into the chat and before we do any of that sort of stuff, I'm going to start just by giving my sort of post-fight breakdown of the fight. For me, the first couple of rounds, quite tentative. I gave Errol the first. I gave Kell the second. Third, I gave to Kell. Fourth, I gave to Errol. I thought the first 4 rounds of the fight were very even. I thought it was a bit of a back and forth matchup. Rounds 5 and 6 were very strong Kell Brook rounds. Kell took a major lead in this fight for me in those rounds. Spence looked vulnerable. There were times that I thought Kell Brook may well have got him buzzed, may well have got him hurt. And I thought Kell had established a very strong lead on the cards. It was 4-2 on my particular card, but I thought Kell looked like he had all the momentum. And indeed, the bookmakers' odds at that point, they had Kell Brook about 4-7 favourites. So they had Kell Brook a strong favourite to take the fight and to win the fight at that point in time. Errol Spence, however, at a time when the momentum was all against him, came out in the 7th round and really changed the course of the fight. From round 7 through to completion, it was pretty much all Errol Spence. The success that Kell Brook was having in some of the early rounds was negated. Errol Spence seemed to be landing the more powerful, meaningful punches. He seemed to be putting punches together a lot better. And Kell Brook, unfortunately, started to show distress signals. He looked like he was starting to tire. He looked like he was starting to get hurt. So, there appeared to be some sort of eye injury, although I would state it appeared to be the other eye to the injury that he suffered in that Golovkin fight. And unfortunately, the writing was on the wall from about rounds 9 and 10. And Errol Spence was able to force the stoppage in the 11th round. People already hit me up on Twitter and that sort of thing, saying that Kell Brook quit. However you want to describe the way Kell Brook went out, the fight was lost at that point, I'm afraid. Kell Brook, I just heard now before I went live, the judges had him 5 rounds down, 3 rounds down, and run 1 round down. Errol Spence was winning the 11th, and to be honest, Kell Brook looked like he was gassed. It is unfortunate that in the 2 most meaningful fights of Kell Brook's career, in one of them the towel came in, and in one of them he essentially took a knee because of an injury. That is unfortunate, but that is obviously the truth of what happened. Right, we're 120 of you guys watching live, so if you are one of those, hit the thumbs up button. Let's get some more people joining. Help me out by hitting the thumbs up button, which will add some visibility to this. And if you're new to the channel, please press subscribe so you can check out all of my other stuff. But yeah, let's, early on in this fight, okay, I thought Kell Brook was doing a very good job early on of controlling the fight from range. And I thought his boxing from range was key to establishing a strong early lead in the fight. Errol Spence, I thought, struggled in the first half of the fight when he was put on the back foot. I actually thought that when Kell Brook was able to apply the pressure and when Kell Brook was able to come forward and start throwing punches and putting them together, Errol Spence became lower volume and really was struggling to get his work off smoothly a lot on the back foot. I also thought in the early part of the fight, Errol Spence kind of struggled to impose himself on the inside and in sort of mid-range, like he does in the majority of fights. It was tentative, it was boxing, it was back and forth, and I thought Kell had the slight advantage. But for me, the 7th round was the turning point in the fight. And I don't know if that was because Kell Brook gassed. I don't know if it took too much out of Kell Brook to make the weight, and potentially his gas tank started to empty. I don't know if he's got too many miles on the clock. I don't know if 147's not right, or I don't know if it was just Errol Spence continuing with that pressure and continuing to build. But for me, that 7th round was a key turning point in the fight, and it was a point where that pressure that Kell was applying, and he was landing good punches on Spence. A number of times, Errol Spence, ate big right hands, and Errol Spence showed a good chin actually to take some of those punches and to keep fighting. But Errol Spence, showed his youth and showed his strength. And from that 7th round, he was boxing better on his back foot. Kell's presser was less effective, and then we started seeing Errol Spence putting punches in bunches together, applying pressure a bit better, and starting to wear Kell Brook down and grind Kell Brook out of there at that point. So I give Errol Spence a huge amount of credit. He's going to be a very, very tough man to beat. Kell Brook is in a difficult spot now. He's now got back-to-back losses as he moves into his 30s. As I say, one of those fights came with the towel being thrown in. One of those fights came with him effectively taking a knee due to an injury, and he's in a difficult place in his career right now. I would say that the 2 fights Kell Brook has lost have been the biggest 2 of his career, and have taken his profile to whole new heights within the sports. So do I think he can come again? Absolutely. Would that be at 147? I doubt it. For me, the only reason to go to 147 pounds at this point would be essentially a cash out fight if one was available with the likes of Amir Khan. If that fight was available, I could see Kell Brook forcing himself to make 147 to try and get a 10 million pound or 5 million pound payday, whatever it would be. But other than that, surely his career's got to be at 154 pounds, and that's the way to reinvent himself at this stage. 300 of you guys now watching live. So if you are one of them 300, please hit subscribe if you haven't done so before, and please hit the thumbs up. Let's get some more visibility on this, and we can get even more people joining into the chat. As for Errol Spence, very tough guy to beat. He answered a lot of questions in this fight. He went through difficult periods. He took punches in the chin. He showed a lot of heart, a lot of grit. And he kept coming. He kept coming away from home with a crowd that was massively against him. He must have known he was presumably down on the scorecards. He showed a huge will to win. And when he really started putting his punches together, he was a force to be reckoned with. He really was. The second those combinations started going in, the second Brook's back was against the ropes and Spence was allowed to get his work off, it became very, very, very difficult work for Kell Brook in there. And I was massively impressed by him. I've got to say, I thought Carl Frotz had a pretty torrid night tonight on the Sky commentary. For a start, Carl Frotz didn't actually seem to know Errol Spence's name, routinely calling him Spencer throughout the course of the fight. I always got the impression from Errol Spence. I always got the impression from Carl Frotz that he's maybe someone who isn't the most massively hardcore boxing fan. And I think that showed sometimes during course of the fight. Not only did he get Errol Spence's name wrong, he also seemed to start criticizing Errol Spence when Spence took the fight to the inside. He started saying Spence is getting desperate. Spence is panicking. Spence is looking raggedy. But he didn't kind of realize that is what Spence does. That is where Spence is at his most effective. And, really that was very, very poor from him. I thought his scoring was very poor. He had Errol Spence 5-1 down on the scorecards off the 6, which I thought was far too generous. We saw that earlier in the Dave Allen fight. He had Dave Allen winning that fight by 7 rounds, which was an absolutely ludicrous scorecard. So there you go. I thought Frotz had a pretty torrid night in the scoring. I thought Frotz getting Errol Spence's name wrong was absolutely woeful. I thought Frotz's, even his boxing commentary, even when he was commentating on Errol Spence, making that transition from outside to inside, I thought he was just reading the fight very, very wrong. So I thought Carl Frotz had an absolutely terrible night. And the fight was good. I've just sent Irish Tom. I don't know if you're in the chat, Irish. I've just sent you a link to it, mate. So check your emails and we'll get you on live. If there's anyone else from the podcast who wants to get on, just drop me an email and I'll reply with the link. But yeah, credit goes out to Irish Tom. He picked Errol Spence, as did I. In fact, I can just see the man is joined now. So Tom, unmute yourself, mate. Good fight.
There we go. Hello.
Hello, Tom. You all right, mate?
Not bad, not too bad. How's it going?
Yeah, good, mate. Good, mate. Give us your reaction.
I just thought it was a great fight.
The signal's not sounding good, I'm afraid, mate. Very in and out. Okay, Tom's dropped out. Presumably having a few internet issues. Oh, he's back again. Let's give it another go, Tom.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, it's my dodgy mouse. Sorry about that. I closed the fucking thing by accident.
No worries.
Just a great high quality fight. Great fight. Brilliant fight. I was never, all I want to say is I watched Kell Brook versus Sean Porter again yesterday, and I was so impressed with what Kell Brook did to Sean Porter, because I think he handled him. And I thought in this fight, he was handling Spence Jr. As well. And to be honest with you, I think if Kell hadn't been ballooning up in weight, hadn't have done the GGG fight and was in his prime and was fighting Spence Jr., I think he probably could have won that fight. I thought he was in the first half of that fight, I had him 5-1 up. I thought he was magnificent. I thought he was just absolutely I just thought he was schooling and controlling that fight. But like we talked about on the podcast, all those things like the weight and all those things, and I just think it just screwed him. And Spence Jr. was very, very good too. But I think Brook for me will go down as one of the best British fighters of his generation, if not the best. And he's got nothing to show for it. Just very disappointed for Kell.
Yeah. In terms of, look, I know it's going to be one of the major talking points to this fight, Tom, and it's unfortunate because it was a very, very good fight, but one of the major talking points already is the manner of the stoppage and the implication or suggestion that Kell Brook quit out of the fight. For me, the fight was already gone by that point, and clearly an injury has been sustained. So I'm not personally too harsh on Brook for it. But what's your take on that, mate?
Oh, we'll find out what the actual injury is. We don't know what the injury is, but some people, I've never boxed. I'm not one of those people who's never boxed and go, oh, he quit. Unlike Terence Crawford, who just tweeted 2 words. I don't know if anybody saw it. It just said, he quit, which I find funny. But I'm not one to slag a fighter because you don't know what pain they're going through, what damage is being done. I think Kell showed a lot of heart in that fight because he was really put under a lot of pressure by Spence Jr. from probably the 7th round on. I gave Spencer all the rounds from the 7th on.
Yeah, same.
And he had a knockdown, and but how many of them were it was literally the 7th. You could just see that Spence still had his speed and Kell didn't have it after 7 rounds, and so much of that will go down to conditioning and making the weight. A lot of people were saying, people on Twitter that I follow or they follow me or whatever, were saying they thought Kell looked magnificent at the weigh-in. I thought he looked bad. I thought his arms looked very skinny, but when he came into the ring, he looked a bigger man. I was very surprised. I thought he really killed himself making that weight, but it was just a great fight. One of those fights, it's so high level and it's so close all the way. Just great. And Kell, that fight turns me into a fan of Kell's. I know he did perform well in the GGG fight, but to me that was just a horseshit fight. But I just feel very sorry for Kell. Maybe some of it is his own fault on how he's decided to manage his career. But in the end of the day, what he'll go down is basically probably has only beaten Sean Porter, and then a whole load of shite defenses, and then 2 losses. And it's kind of sad for looking now. Kell really convinced me in that fight of his quality, and it's sad to look back on his career and think he's only basically had one high level win. It's kind of a bit sad.
Tom, what do you think was the turning point in the fight? Because for me, I didn't have Brook as hot, as far ahead as you did, but I had Brook nicely up and looking really, really good. And then, as you say, 7th round onwards, it was all Spence. I mean, do you think it was, I don't know, the weight cut? Do you think it was some of the body work that Errol was landing? Do you think it was an injury? It just seemed that Brook was well up in the fight, and then, completely the momentum changed from the 7th round. I mean, do you think there's a single factor as to why that happened?
I think it's multiple. I think he hasn't lived a life outside the gym. He went up to 160, he cut the muscle, had a lot of weight to lose. And the other thing is, Spence is an elite fighter too. Let's not take it away from Spence, because, those early rounds he was getting beaten, but it wasn't like he wasn't hitting Kell. He was, but Kell was certainly the ring general in those early rounds, I thought. But, the body work, Spence is putting in the body work. And the thing is, it wasn't like Kell had an injury and then that's not what it looked like to me. I'm sure that's the narrative that'll be spun now or something, but I don't believe it. I just think come the 7th round, you could see his pace just dropped slightly, And when you're up there at that elite level and you're fighting, Spence Jr., he's 4 years younger or whatever, and he hasn't taken the batterings that Kell has taken. Just that split second, if you slow down a tenth of a second or something on your jab or, your reflex going back, it just means you're going to start getting caught. And it wasn't like he got bed up in the 7th. It was just like you noticed that Spence was suddenly winning the boxing match. He went from losing the boxing match to winning the boxing match. And once he won the boxing match for a couple of rounds, that was it. That was just the end of it.
Yeah. Well, what do you think's left for Kell, Tom? Do you think there's still a fight with Khan? Do you think he should move up to 154? Or do you think it's time to maybe even consider retirement?
Well, I was of the opinion that, I'm kind of the opinion that Kell is not going to be one of those fighters who fights a long time. I don't know how in love he is with the lifestyle, you know what I mean, of not drinking, eating and all that kind of stuff. Maybe he's a guy who puts on weight easy, but I don't think so. But, personally, I'd be fine with Kell retiring. That's the way I feel. I think he's taken 2 beatings there. If he goes in with Khan now, he's going to be I just feel like Kell now is going to be a shell of the fighter Kell was 2 years ago. He's going to be 85% of the fighter, certainly at 147. At 154, he might do something, but he might do the Khan at 147, just take a cash out. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually took that cash out. And I think Amir Khan would take it because he go, Kell's on the slide. So that fight will probably be made. But, I don't think that's I just don't think that's I don't think that's near the big fight it would have been 2 years ago.
No, it's not as big as it was. 305 of you guys watching live now. So if you are one of them, please subscribe if you're new, and please hit the thumbs up button so we can get even more people joining this live stream. Pleased that I can see that my good friend Paul has also joined us. Paul, do you want to unmute yourself, mate? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, loud and clear. I'll just turn up your volume, but you're coming through loud and clear, mate. Great fight, disappointing ending. Give us your take.
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit sick for Kell. I kind of obviously quite encouraged during the earlier rounds. I too thought he was kind of he was definitely winning the fight. For me, but don't know if I'd have him as far ahead as Kyle Froch did. And I heard you pointing out the Spencer thing. I kind of wonder whether that's Kyle Froch calling him Errol Spencer is kind of almost like a diss, like Floyd always called Eddie Hearn Hearns, and in America they always call Kell Brooks. So I don't know whether they were just like, oh, Spencer, like to try and kind of like diss him a little bit, like we don't know who you are type of thing. Because towards the end of the fight, he started calling him Spence. Yeah, I mean, I think you can't really say he quit. I mean, like, I know it was the other eye, but when you think about it, depending on to what degree it was shattered from the Golovkin fight, you don't know whether some of those fractures kind of like went over. Because if you think about it, it's all really one structure, isn't it? It's kind of odd to think that I definitely thought his eye looked kind of fucked. He started like way before he took that knee, he started pouring at it. He was blinking rapidly. He kind of like it was a shame. It was a shame. Good fight. Good performance by Spence to come back. I think he did tick a lot of boxes. Like it was a big crowd, very much against him, and I think he showed a lot of mettle to come back, because Kell during the early part of the fight definitely looked like he still had a bit to give, But I do think the weight loss just like towards the end, he looked like even in that was it which round was it stopped in the 10th?
I think 11th, Paul.
11th. So I think it might have been in the 10th when Spence had him really hurt. He had him hurt towards the start of the round. I think it was I think it might have been the 10th. And Kell was trying to throw back, but he looked like he was punching through fucking treacle, mate. He couldn't lift his arms. And that's, I mean, like I just think he was drained. I think that was good. It was always going to tell in the second half of the fight. And for me, that's kind of what happened,
100%. Yeah. How impressed were you by Errol Spence, Paul? Looking at that, do you think Errol Spence is a beatable fighter, or do you think he's absolute elite level from what you've seen?
And I think he is. He is probably elite level, but I do think he's also beatable. I mean, I think you alluded to this earlier in the broadcast. Like, he looked kind of like a bit vulnerable when Kell put it on him from range. I think he is somebody that if somebody with a really good long range game that was kind of like young and fresh like him, might have the beating of him. Whether that fighter is around in the welterweight division right now, I don't know. Impressed with some of the body work. I mean, that's the other thing I would say. I think some of the body shots he caught Kell with were really good. And I think that probably sort of like played a part in, like Tom says, can't take much away from him. He's come over here and he's done a job. But I think those body shots probably played a part in just taking Kell Brook's gas. I think he was kind of a bit fucked towards the end, to be fair.
Yeah. What do you think is next for Brook? Do you think 154 would be the solid option? Do you think the Khan fight's still there?
I think the Khan fight's probably more likely now. I've always kind of had the gut feeling that Khan really didn't want the fight. I always have kind of felt that Khan kind of thought he was going to get beat by Brook. And I think probably 2 years ago, I would have, for me personally, would have made Brook the overwhelming favourite. I think he may be more likely to take the fight now. But again, I don't really give a shit about that fight anymore. I mean, like, they're both guys that are kind of past their best. They're both guys that have had some quite bad losses now. Knocked unconscious, faces busted up and everything. And so it's kind of one of them fights that you just think, like, whoever wins a fight like that, would they really get that much credit? Like if Khan wins it, it's like a busted up Brook. If Brook wins it, it's kind of like an over the hill, been iced by Canelo sort of Khan and Danny Garcia and on and on and on. So, it's, I don't know, there's not as much value in that fight as there was certainly like even 18 months ago for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's very odd. They're two of the biggest name fighters in British boxing. but neither of them has really had a peak. You know, they're both guys who, unfortunately, are more famous now for their losses than their wins. And if you look at their peak wins, it's probably Maidana for Kell, and it's probably Porter for Brook. You know, it's unfortunate how their careers have developed. If they'd had that fight 2 years ago or so, it really would have been, a big fight. You know, when I look back at this fight, you know, I really want to see what comes out of this. About, you know, I think that 7th round is so key, because I think early on I thought Kell Brook was doing a real good job of stopping Spence from getting his inside work off. We know how good Spence is on the inside and when he's able to put punches together. I thought Brook was doing a good job of holding in the early rounds. I thought Brook's footwork was stopping Spence from setting his feet and throwing those punches. I thought when Brook was on the front foot, Spence became very low volume and looked like he could even get hurt on the back foot. You know, I thought he was not anywhere near the fighter on the back foot. And then in the 7th round, it just all changed. And it's so bizarre for me, because the 5th and 6th round were the best rounds by far for Kell Brook. But, you know, I don't know if maybe the gas tank just started to empty. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was the fact that he's 30. He hasn't lived the life. Maybe it was the fact that Spence's bodywork was, I don't know. But it just seemed to, the momentum just seemed to turn at a time when Brook was really coming on strong. And it's kind of bizarre looking back on it for me.
Yeah, like the thing is, though, their gossip is that, you know, while he was winning those rounds, it wasn't like Spence wasn't targeting his body and wasn't hitting him sometimes. Spence was having success in all of the rounds he was losing.
Yeah, you're right. They were close rounds, weren't they? And I guess they were fought. I'm not going to say they were fought at a furious pace, but they were very back and forth, weren't they? I guess they were. You know, there were moments for each in the majority of the rounds, I guess. So, yeah. I don't even think they were actually. Some of them were that close. I thought Kell won them, a lot of them fairly easy, but he was still getting caught. You know, I think he was. If it was like, I don't know what the punch stats were, but I get the impression like this, the punch stats would be like 20-15 to Kell, but you're still getting hit with 15 shots, and probably 8 of them are body shots. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, that does make sense. What did you make of the card tonight in general, Tom? Do you think it was a good night, good show?
I watched the Dave Allen fight, the Anthony Fowler fight, and some of the George Groves fight. I missed a little bit at the start, so I thought it was pretty good. Dave Allen's fight was very dull. That was a dull ass fight, and. So basically, George Groves is good. God, I thought George Groves was going to lose that fight, and I think any top super middleweight is going to do him. Certainly doesn't want to go near David Benavidez. I'll tell you that much. But I think any top super middleweight will do him, because, you know, if your man had weathered that storm and got through that 5th round, I think George Groves would have been knocked out.
What happened? Because I got back late. Sorry to ruin the.
Basically, your man was coming and swarming all over George Groves for about 4 or 5 rounds. And Groves was hitting him, but, you know, he was on the back foot up against the ropes an awful lot of the time. And then he basically did a 50-punch combination in the 5th or 6th round, and your man got stopped on his feet.
Yeah. I think it was the 5th round the stoppage came, and I had George Groves 3-1 up after the first 4 rounds, but he was being made to work massively, and he was eating punches, and Chudinov was closing down the gap, and Chudinov showed, you know, a ridiculous chin in the fight. He never went down. He never got hurt. He did get hurt, but he never went down. He never looked necessarily like going down, but he ate basically 30 seconds of power punches from George Groves, and the referee was right to stop it, I think, realistically. But after the first 3 or 4 rounds, even though Groves was winning them, I was convinced he was going to lose. And after 2 rounds, Chudinov, who was a 7-2 underdog, was a favourite with the in-play bookmakers, because, you know, the pressure he was putting George Groves under, you know, that looked like Groves was going to crack. It really did. I was thinking to myself, will George Groves be the best fighter of this era from Britain not to win a world title? But, you know, he's got there in the end. He's finally got one on the 4th attempt. where he goes next, I imagine it's going to be, you know, the big fights now, whether it's the Gale or Eubank, you know, whatever it is. I think he'll be
Callum Smith.
balanced.
Maybe Callum Smith, I reckon.
I doubt it. That's not a pay-per-view fight, is it? Callum Smith Groves.
Yeah, it'll be De Gale. Now that Kell Brook is gone, he's not a pay-per-view fighter anymore, probably, unless it's Khan. And then Eddie only has AJ and Bellew. Bellew's not long for this world. So then it'll probably be De Gale he'll try and turn into pay-per-view fighter. That's my thinking.
Not long.
Yeah.
World. That's optimistic for Bellew, Tom. Not long for this world, no. I missed it all tonight. I was coming. I went to London today, and I was coming back here. Got stuck in fucking traffic like a div, and just got home for the ring walks for the main event. Like, so I'm gonna have to watch all the rest of them in a bit. But they're good fights on the undercard, or what?
What was the
Jamie? You know what?
What's the Jamie Cox fight?
Very poor fight, Jamie Cox. Jamie Cox looked very sloppy. He looked really average, actually, Tom. I must say. I wonder if he would be better at middleweight than super middleweight, because he doesn't look that hard a puncher. I know everyone talks about how hard he hits, but I've seen several Jamie Cox fights now when he really hasn't looked like a hard puncher. He doesn't look overly quick. He's very defensively open. He's so vulnerable to like a boxer type. Who can be a bit slick and make him miss and box him. A real scrappy, very, very average performance. You know, I'm sure he does beat Rocky Fielding, but based on that performance, you know, Rocky Fielding looks superior in certain elements. I look at Jamie Cox, and I actually think he's a poor man's Chris Eubank Jr. I think he's got very similar strengths to Chris Eubank Jr., but the weaknesses are the same. I don't really think he's a super middleweight. I don't really think he's got great power that he's made out to have. I don't really think he's good technically. He eats a lot of punches. I don't see him as the same level as, any of those top flight guys. I've got to say it. I'll tell you the one thing I will say in Matchroom's favour tonight, and we've been over 500 live, and 500 people watching is an absolutely massive personal best. So shout out to everyone who's watching. If you are new, please hit subscribe and do hit the thumbs up button so we'll get more visibility. But one thing I will say on the Matchroom side is the scorecards tonight were very, very fair. You know, Frotz had Dave Allen winning the fight by 7, and he ended up losing the fight. And all 3 judges had Kell Brook down on the scorecards at the time of the stoppage. One of them had Kell Brook down by 5 rounds. So it wasn't, it wasn't Eddie the Envelope tonight, Tom.
No, well, it wasn't. And the thing is, in the Kell Brook fight, I had Kell only down 1 round, so I was being paid off by Eddie as well tonight. The watches on drugs, like watching that Dave Allen fight, because Carl Froch, he really likes guys who just put pressure on. You know, he always channels himself versus Durrell, just giving pressure to he was saying things like, Ivan is punching him in the head a lot, but, they're not slowing him down. So that's not how you score fucking rounds, though, is it?
No.
You got a guy outlanding. And you're saying Dave Allen was outlanding the guy. I would have loved to have seen those punch stats, because Dave Allen doesn't throw enough shots.
Yeah, Dave Allen was pressing his back to the ring. So Dave Allen was pushing Leroy Thomas.
And walking him.
Yeah, Leroy Thomas was hitting him with the uppercut up the middle, 100 times that fight, do you reckon? Maybe more?
I don't know, a lot of times. And, Dave Allen is strange, because on his back foot, Dave Allen shows pretty good defensive skills. On his front foot, he doesn't. He doesn't bother a lot of the time. It's like he doesn't bother. And then the thing is with Dave, it's kind of weird, is that, like, he doesn't have very good punching technique, and I think his arms are quite short. So to land, if he's on the outside and he's doing his slick defensive skills, he can't land because his arms aren't long enough and he's short. And then if he's on the inside, he smothers his work. He's got poor punching technique. He just strikes me as a fella who boxing too late. He's obviously a very athletic guy.
I think some people just have a lot of natural sort of like physical disadvantages as well, don't they? And it's just like one of them. What can you say? I mean, it's like Amir Khan's chin, isn't it? It's kind of like Amir Khan, certainly at lower weights, had a hell of a lot to give in the ring, but his chin just was never there, was it? And it's
true. It's true. Is it? It is.
Thing.
But I think Dave Allen didn't start boxing until he's 17 or something. So that's you could like if he was in the gyms at the age of 10, he could be a much better fighter, But
he didn't adapt, which frustrated me. He was wearing this guy down. Lenroy Thomas looked like a broken man in there for me at times. He looked very, very tired. Allen was putting on all the pressure. For me, what Allen needed to realise is he kept putting on this pressure and Lenroy Thomas would just sit back on the ropes and hit him up the centre with an uppercut. What Allen needed to do was take a step back, create a little bit of space and, try and throw a jab or something like that. Try and throw a punch where you can score and not eat one. Unfortunately, that cost him. The other thing I was going to say, guys, I don't know if you saw it. All three of the Olympian fights, all three of them, I think there's a strong case that the Olympians should have been disqualified. Literally the Okoli fight, the Cordina fight, and the Fowler fight. I'm not sure if Fowler even was an Olympian actually, but you get what I mean. The three, yeah. But
who's the other one?
In the Fowler, Cordina, and Okoli.
I didn't see the Cordina one. What did he do?
So Cordina, so I'm trying to make sure I've got them right. Cordina hit on the break badly, and I think the fighter got pulled out. Their corner pulled him out as a result. I was only watching it with one eye because I was tweeting at the time, but that's what appeared to be the case. He landed a haymaker on the break. Okoli, that one, nobody even mentioned that. Okoli, I think, could easily have been disqualified. He hit the guy when he was down. What was the other one? The Fowler fight. For me, that probably should have been a disqualification. It really was. It was very, very odd behaviour. All three of the debutants committed like absolutely blatant fouls. And in the Fowler fight, the real good look, didn't he? He had a real good look, and I think he would have called that a DQ if the opponent was, if that opponent had been a bit more savvy, they'd have stayed down, wouldn't they?
I think he was right like that tonight as well, because somebody sent me a message at the start of this fight where I was still on the motorway and said, "What's the odds Howard Foster stops Brook Spence when the first jab lands or whatever?" Like taking a piss and that. But actually, I think Howard Foster was actually quite I think that fight could have been stopped in the round before quite easily. I think I've seen fights stopped quicker than that.
Howard Foster never stops the A side early. That's all you need to know.
That might be it then. Okay.
He has never ever stopped the A side early. He only stops the B side early. It's a funny coincidence.
I'll tell you what, from a gambling perspective, I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on future opponents of Lawrence Okoli. A very close eye, because people on my Twitter thinking he's a world champion to be. I could see him getting knocked unconscious at British title level. I really could. This is the guy who, he is raw as hell. I think back to when AJ turned over, and I remember saying I think Joshua was very, very raw, but Okoli is a whole new level of raw, isn't he? He was literally fighting like a pub brawler against this guy from, this not journeyman, but whoever this guy was who'd been brought in to fight him. And Okoli's so upright and easy to hit. I think it's going to be a huge problem for him. He doesn't seem to have any defensive awareness whatsoever.
Yeah, I think he's obviously one of those guys with dynamite in his hands. Some lads think that they can just mill through guys like, the pig, Armand the pig. But, I think there's a bit of that in him. And Nigel Benn used to be like that too, But Nigel Benn had some boxing about him, but also he was, at the start, he was like that. So, some guys can learn. Nigel Benn ended up being a good boxer in the end. But some guys are either come to it too late or a bit too fucking thick in the head to do it. So we'll see.
Seems to work for Deontay Wilder, just being able, just having dynamite in his hands and fuck all else. Like,
Yeah,
but Deontay Wilder doesn't get hit all the time.
he doesn't. No. Tom's spot on. I mean,
he doesn't. Yeah.
Deontay Wilder has actually got. He doesn't always use it, and he's particularly, he's particularly vulnerable when he's closing the show. But Deontay Wilder does fight disciplined rounds behind a very, very good jab.
Yeah.
Lawrence Okoli literally goes out and swings like like a maniac. So it seems.
That's the thing with what you call him with Deontay Wilder. Like when he's losing his rounds, it's generally because he's getting outboxed. It's not like he's getting he's wide open, throwing big haymakers and going to get decked. He just gets outboxed and then he lands one and it's over. But like Okoli looks like he could get knocked out at any fucking moment.
Yeah.
It's with these fights, it's like people just see him knock out one or two journeymen and then they just dive on some insane hype train. Like I've had a few people saying stuff to me about when they know you're a boxing fan and that they start talking about Dubois and Okoli and that, and it's just kind of like, I don't know yet. No fucking clue, man. They're fighting nobodies. There's no way to tell whether they're going to be any good or not at this point.
Yeah. I think there's more reasons to suggest Okoli won't be a world champion than he will be at this point, I'm afraid. But we'll see as he steps up in level. Eddie Hearn was saying earlier, like the cruiserweight division is so thin that he thinks Okoli is going to be manoeuvred very quickly. And I've seen him say in previous interviews that he could see Okoli fighting Wadi Camacho and Isaac Chamberlain this year. Don't get me wrong. What was that?
He's some idiot if he does that.
Yeah, I mean, I think assuming that Lawrence Okoli would be a massive favourite to win those fights by knockout with the bookmakers, I think I'd probably bet against him on both occasions, Tom.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Put him in with. Do you know who KO? I'm talking about cruiserweight. Put him in with Manny Askins.
Yeah,
Manny Askins would spark him out. And that's the level of Wadi Camacho and them. Manny Askins is a bit better than Wadi Camacho now, but he's not far. If he's talking about putting him into Wadi Camacho, like the very next step up, British title level will spark him out.
By the way, I know it's a bit off subject. We was talking about Benavidez in the podcast the other day. There,
yeah.
Oh man,
did you see it, Paul?
Oh man, he's something else. Him. Did you see the combination he hit Porky Medina with him? Porky Medina's no mug, like he's no world beater, but he's a tough bloke, like. And that Benavidez looks like the real deal to me. The hands.
He's number one in the division, I think.
He's got fantastic hand speed. He's got great movement, great feet. Yeah, man, he looks really good. He seems to have flown right under my radar. Had you guys been watching him for a while or what? Like,
I think I've seen him fight once prior, Paul. So no.
That was the first time I saw him. Gossip, have you seen that fight since?
No, I haven't.
You should check that out. That's the fight to check out. If you've got fights you need to check out, that's definitely the number one fight to check out.
I heard Dwyer saying how good it was as well, so I must do.
I mean, when he stopped it, he must have hit him with 6 punches, and the 6 punches were landed all within like a second and a half. That's how fast the hands were.
Fast hands, powerful as well, and power.
Yeah. He's really good. He's gonna be pound for pound job in a couple of years, I reckon.
Yeah, he cleans out that whole division, if you ask me, and he's tough as fucking nails as well. He's one of those guys, like Gossip, you always go on about these guys, like you say about Tyson Fury, they're a natural fighter or something. If a fella gets him back on the ropes, and he's getting caught a bit. You're going to get caught. You're on the ropes. The guy's unloading on you, but he's not getting caught all the time, and he's getting ready. He's always ready to hit you back. and he'll sit there for maybe 5 seconds, take 7 or 8 shots, maybe some of them on the arms or shoulders, and then he'll just go 1, 2, 3, hurt that guy, get him off him about a yard, and then he'll swing around, and then he's in the center of the ring, and then he's pow. He's just he's a quality fighter.
Yeah, I'm hearing lots of good things. Let me bring it back on topic, guys, because I think probably have to wrap it up sooner rather than later. But Errol Spence, is he now the #1 fighter at 147 pounds based on resume? Do you think he's ready to step in the ring with someone like a Keith Thurman? And if that fight were to happen, who would you be choosing in that one?
Well, Paul, what do you think?
Well, I personally think he probably is the #1 in the division. I kind of thought these two were the 1 and 2 anyway. Before this fight, I think both of them at their best were a little bit better than Thurman for me. Whether Thurman's experience might be a factor in that, I'm not sure, but I definitely think he's ready to, and he's a world champion now. So, and plus he's been calling Thurman out for about 18 months, 2 years anyway. So I can see that as a possibility, certainly in the future.
I think it's a great fight, but the man for me, if he moves up after he gets rid of Ndongo, Terence Crawford will clean the whole lot of them boys out.
I don't know if he's big enough though, is he?
But it doesn't matter to him so much because they won't be able to hit him enough. He's so slippery. Like, you look at how many times Kell would get caught in those rounds versus, say, what would happen, say, with Terence Crawford if he didn't want to get hit.
Yeah, I'd probably make Terence Crawford a favourite over all of them, if I'm honest. I've never been completely sold on Keith Thurman. I do believe he's the #1 welterweight. It does. A few people are pointing out in the chat, and they are correct. It kind of depends where you see Manny Pacquiao, because if you still view Manny Pacquiao as an active competitor at 147, he is, of course, the #1 based on resume. Putting Pacquiao to the side, because he's certainly in the autumn of his career, I think Keith Thurman is the #1 of the next generation in terms of the fights he's had. I've never been completely sold on Keith Thurman. I probably would pick Errol Spence to beat him if they fought next time out, I would suggest.
I think it's a 60-40 fight for me for Errol Spence. But the thing is, I thought Sean Porter beat Errol Spence, and I still stand by that.
You think
to
beat who?
I thought Sean Porter bet Thurman. No, bet Thurman. I thought Kell definitely bet Porter, but I thought Porter bet Thurman. So
did I.
So I think Porter is in that mix for me. Porter, Spence, Pacquiao, Thurman. Kell's not a top fighter 147 anymore. That's just the way I look at it. And I didn't think he was going into this fight today. I thought he was going to lose, and I thought Errol was for me, the bookies had it right. Yeah,
big weight of money on Errol Spence, which I guess is an indicator. Tell you what, the Americans they're putting over some good fighters now, aren't they? There's a lot of big talents from that side of the world who are looking really promising.
I think most of the top fighters, except leave out the heavyweights and the cruiserweights, but at all the other divisions down to, say, maybe super bantamweight, most of the top talents are either Russian or former Soviet bloc or American. That's the way it is at the moment. England had a lot of champions, belt holders, but I think a lot of them have cleaned out, apart from AJ is, of course, and Tyson. But a lot of those paper kind of belts are on their way back over to the States.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, a lot of those guys that were holding those belts were, even though they were world champions, in all honesty, weren't world-class fighters. You look at, Krolla, even Ricky Burns. I mean, like I know he's done well and everything, but like not really.
Yeah, a lot of these fighters, it's such an advantage to be from a rich country if you're a boxer. Because if you're from Serbia, Montenegro, or from Kazakhstan, or you really have to really beat guys to get their hands on a world title. So there's always going to be a bias to like British and American fighters getting their hands on titles and stuff like that. So, but the Americans, like all of those slick, like we got Terence Crawford, we got Errol Spence, we got Gervonta Davis. They're three fucking top talents now. Thurman, Andre Ward. There's a lot of that pound for pound now is back. Slick black American fighters. They're back to rule the roost.
So who would you guys say are the top fighters in the UK right now then? Say the top 3 UK fighters right now.
Frampton, AJ. Who else is there?
Gale.
Yeah.
Let me think. Selby.
No. Selby hasn't done enough.
It's hard though, isn't it? This is why I asked, because it's kind of like you have to really search, don't you?
Well, for me, I've got AJ as the number 1 heavyweight in the world. I've got the Gale as the number 1 super middleweight in the world.
Not for long. Not for long.
Yeah, he's very vulnerable in that position. I would agree.
It's a weak division as well.
I don't think for long either. Like the difference between the way De Gale did against Porky Medina and the way David Benavidez did against Porky Medina was like watching, I don't know, fucking Jamie Cox or Roy Jones Jr. Like it was kind of like the difference was fucking huge.
It was like Porky, just like Porky Medina versus Benavidez and De Gale. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
it's like Frankie Gavin and Bundu, and then Errol Spence and Bundu. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tom, it'd be good for you to watch that Jamie Cox fight, because I've questioned you on it a few times in the podcast, but I've just never seen it with Jamie Cox. I don't really see the opposite to him.
I know what you mean. Like the best I've seen him at is at middleweight. Maybe super middle is a bit the other.
He looks like the other guy tonight, and maybe at middleweight his power's a lot more, and I don't know. Maybe that would be a big difference.
The problem is as well is when you're not really doing it in the ring, how much of a wanker you are out of it starts to come into play a bit more. Like if you're amazing in the ring, a lot of things can be kind of like people will turn the other cheek to a lot of things. But if you kind of not performing, then I don't know. It's kind of amplifies it even more, I think.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is that he is 30 now, and he's been in and out of prison, and he hasn't had the big fights. And the thing is, he might have left his best days in the gyms 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah,
he's been inactive as well, and hopefully that was a factor in it tonight. He has been inactive. It's not like he'd been in an 8-week training camp for this guy, so hopefully it was just a case he was a little bit rusty. He hadn't had a full-on prep. A lot better fighter. I've
a question for you boys. Eddie Hearn said he wouldn't work with drug cheats, but he was going to put headliners on with drug cheats, and now he's going to get him on as a woman strangler and a convicted criminal. Do you think Eddie Hearn would have worked with Jimmy Savile if the money was right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Eddie Hearn has worked with a lot of drug cheats now, hasn't he? I mean, Dillian White is assigned to his stable. Kid Galahad has featured on Eddie Hearn shows. He's certainly made reference to working with Tyson Fury. If Tyson Fury comes back into the sport, very, very clear that he's departed from that stance.
Eddie Hearn would promote Pol Pot versus Hitler if there was money in it. Come on, man.
There'd be good money in that fight, though.
What would be interesting is there's never really been an Eddie Hearn fighter fail a drug test. You know, if someone like if one of Eddie Hearn's marquee names currently failed the performance enhancing drugs test, that would be a bit of a test for him. How
many top flight British athletes have failed drug tests? None. You have to go back to Dwayne Chambers before you get one.
Tyson Fury is.
Sorry, I'm not talking about athletics. I'm just talking about athletics. Sorry.
Does anybody, like anybody in the chat as well, does anybody think that if AJ failed a drugs test, Eddie Hearn would stand by his principles and let him go? Like, say you're going to have to go and find another promoter? Come on.
I think it's highly unlikely. Yeah.
Does anybody think that if AJ failed a drug test, it would get brushed under the carpet?
Yeah, probably.
I think it does. Like, the history of sports is that stuff happens. Carl Lewis, 1988 Olympics. The one that Ben Johnson got done for Carl Lewis was actually tested positive before going to the Olympics, and he got let off. I think when it comes down to it, it depends. A UCAD testing doesn't do all the proper testing that you need to catch these guys.
The thing is, there's big money, a huge money in AJ fights now. Certainly now, from now on. Is he ever going to get? Is he going to get less than 5 million for a fight in the next 3 or 4 years? I very much doubt it.
Not unless he takes repeated losses and decides to keep fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the status the way it is, so in a situation like that where there's huge money at stake, of course things like that are gonna happen. It's just I think it's just the world, isn't it?
Here, I have a question for you guys. What's happening with Nigel Benn?
Conor Benn, do you mean?
Conor Benn, yeah.
I saw an interview with him the other day. He's coming back relatively shortly. He's been out of the ring for a number of reasons. I would suspect that a large reason to do with it is there was a lot of press and hype around that Robin Deacon incident where he was accused of making comments relating to Robin Deacon's disability. And I believe that featured in some pretty mainstream newspapers. So my guess is they've kind of wanted to get him out of the spotlight and let things die down a bit before bringing him back. But
why? What did he say?
So Robin Deacon, do you know what? I'm not going to speak about it in. I'm not going to quote him because I don't know Tom. But Robin Deacon has some sort of childhood disability that if you Googled, I'm sure you'd be able to track down the details. He called Conor Benn out for a fight and didn't seem to know who Robin Deacon was, which I guess Robin Deacon isn't the biggest name in the sport. So, look, Conor Benn genuinely didn't seem to know who he was. He was asked about it in an interview with IFL TV. There seemed to be some sort of Twitter exchange where Conor Benn made reference to the disability and, some of the sort of seemed to take the mick out of it, basically.
Okay.
And it made, I think it was a big news story in the Sun. So if you wanted to Google it, you'd come across it in a matter of seconds and you'd get the exact case. But yeah, Robin D, there was a lot of hype around it, and I think they maybe wanted that to sort of die down before bringing him back. But yeah, back in the day, Conor Benn was like, a year ago or 6 months ago, he was like their hyped 4-rounder, wasn't he? But now they've got so many guys like Coley and Cordina and, who's the guy from Newcastle again? The one who looks really good. Josh Kelly and Fowler. You just kind of wonder whether he's going to be, you just kind of wonder if he's going to, go a bit under the radar now. He's going to get lost in the mix of those 4 6-round fighters, I would guess.
Well, hey, what do you call it, boy?
IBF world champion Chris Eubank Jr. as well. Anybody know what's happening with him?
Yeah, well, he's gone with the high bike. the less said about him. I heard, what the rumor did I hear about him? He wants to fight, is it Sam Solomon or somebody? But what do you call it? So the four big fights we had: Indongo versus Burns, Hay versus Bellew, Klitschko versus Vlad, or versus AJ, and Spence versus Brook. That who would have picked AJ and Bellew to be the two winners from them four?
I'd have picked Linares to beat Crawler. Would I have picked?
I would pick Bellew.
And Crawler lost as well. So
Yeah.
it's 2 out of 5 for Eddie. He's lost a few big ones.
He's lost a few big ones, although I thought a lot of those I thought were cash out fights. I still think Bellew Hay to this day was a cash out fight.
Yeah.
I think Ricky Burns and Dongo, that probably wasn't a cash out fight, to be fair. That was like a roll of the dice, as was probably Brook Spence. But yeah, it's funny. Eddie Stable's taken a bit of a knock to it, certainly. Just based on boxing talent, you'd probably say Frank's got the better stable out of the two at present, but factor is next level, really, I guess, isn't it? I mean, his commercial worth is probably worth more alone than any stable of fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did any of you see the recent Bellew interview where he's talking about fighting? He's talking about fighting a few different heavyweights, but including Deontay Wilder, which I thought, like, I kind of like, he started off saying, well, maybe I'll move to heavyweight, but I'll only obviously look at some of the shorter guys and whatnot, which I thought was realistic. And now, I mean, can anybody imagine fucking Bellew versus Wilder?
I think it's possible. I think it's very possible.
Yeah.
I also think it's possible they'll use that as a way of trying to get more negotiation for the David Hay rematch. But I think Hearn will be. I've said before, I think Hearn will use Dillian Whyte and Tony Bellew as expendable pawns against Joseph Parker and Deontay Wilder, and I think he'll bring over Parker and Wilder, get them to fight Bellew and Whyte in the UK, sell some tickets out of it, and really build Wilder and Parker to the UK casual market, so that when they square off against Joshua next year for unifications, that those are Wembley Stadium type events. I think he'll sacrifice Bellew and Whyte to make that, and I think he'll, if Bellew or Whyte were to win, that would just make an even bigger fight, I guess.
I completely agree with you. I think he's in a win-win situation with both of them, because when he signed Dillian Whyte, you kind of wondered, didn't you? You wonder now whether that's been he's been playing a long game on Dillian Whyte.
I always thought it was with a view to the rematch.
Well, yeah, that's what looked most likely. Maybe it was, but
I think Dillian's looked quite poor, hasn't he?
I think he was a bit.
I think it'd be hard to. It was quite easy first fight to brand Dillian as a guy who could beat AJ. There was a good story there. But if they squared off again, AJ's improved so much, and Dillian really, for me, has not. I'm not saying he's a bad fighter, but he's not improved.
And he's been in a couple of wars as well, hasn't he, Dillian?
He has. He's made hard work of it. His powers look less convincing. Technically, he's very, very dubious. He's not a high-paced fighter. Guys like Chisora and Lewison have really shown gaps in him. I think it's much harder to brand Dillian as a guy who can tangibly beat AJ. And I kind of think because of that, Eddie Hearn's probably more likely to use him against a Wilder or a Parker. And look, if he goes and beats one of those guys, of course the rematch is there to be had. But otherwise, I also think, Paul, obviously Dillian Whyte, Marius Watt got called off due to an injury.
Yeah, and Chisora
Helenius got mysteriously called off without much reason. I also think we may well see the Chisora Whyte fight soon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. When the Whyte fight got called off first, and then I think it was certainly within a day. I think it was that the Chisora Helenius fight cancellation got announced. So yeah, you're probably right. And then I think probably Bellew Parker is probably the most likely. But can you imagine if we get those fights this year, if they can squeeze them fights in this year? We look at the fights we've already had, plus we've got Triple G Canelo. I mean, you'd have to say that this is probably one of the best years of boxing in many, many a year. Many.
Yeah, it's the best year I can remember.
It's the best year of boxing in my life, I think.
Yeah, for
all these fights, it's brilliant. They're all getting made for whatever reason.
I can't remember.
Lads, I'm really. I'm going to have to do a runner.
All right, mate.
Lads, cheers. I'm going to do a runner. I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Good luck, Paul.
All right. Speaks, yeah,
good to hear from you again.
Yeah, all the best, Tom. Thanks for coming on.
All right.
It really has been the best year for ages, Paul, and I think Floyd McGregor could happen, which isn't a great fight, but it's ridiculous for the sport of boxing in terms of the commercials. I think the Joshua Klitschko rematch will happen. Canelo Triple G. I think those Bellew Hay or Bellew Wilder or Parker White.
It's fucking incredible. It's like, as a boxing fan, you kind of like think, yeah, it's a great year of boxing, but then like you get really long periods with no boxing as well. Part of me almost wishes they'd just like, I don't know, space some of it out a bit more. But yeah, I mean, God Almighty, it's one of the best years I can remember of boxing. It's just we're really spoiled, aren't we? Really,
Yeah, no, it really is. And you could maybe throw in Groves de Gale or de Gale Eubank into that mix as well,
Yeah.
Paul, mate, I've pretty much got everything off my chest, and if I'm honest, I'm starting to feel the effects of a long day, mate. Have you got?
Me too.
You got anything else to throw into the mix?
No, me too. I'm knackered as well, buddy. I'll see you Wednesday. Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah. Are you going to be back on this week?
Yeah, I've been too well, as you know, but I'm on the mend now. I'm pretty much better, so I'll be fighting fit again Wednesday, and looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on tonight. Yeah.
No, anytime. It's always a pleasure, Paul, and I look forward to introducing you to Jay, who is the
yeah. There was a bit of speculation that he might have replaced me.
I know a lot of people are saying that, but no, he's the better looking, more knowledgeable Seri rather than you, Paul. So yeah, all good. But,
all right, see you Wednesday. See everyone later. Yeah, cheers, man.
Have a good evening, mate. Cheers. So there we are, guys. Bit of a post-fight reaction for you. Probably do a video tomorrow just with some next day thoughts. So if you are watching live, or if you're catching this after it's gone up on the channel, do please hit subscribe so you can check out the video tomorrow, and just so you can check out all the other stuff. Cheers for everyone who's watched live. I can see Damien and Jared, some of the regular characters in the chat. So shout out to you both, and shout out to everyone who's been watching live. Please hit the thumbs up button, which will give this a bit more visibility, and we'll get more new people to be able to check it out, which is exactly what we want as we continue to hopefully grow out the channel. So yeah, I'll leave it there, guys. I hope everyone's enjoyed the live reaction, and yeah, we'll be back very, very soon. All the best.